Good morning, or afternoon, or evening, depending where you are. I am Tricia Speyer, the Vice President of the Northeast Ohio Society for Technical Communication, who is hosting this webinar. The Society for Technical Communication, or STC, is the world's largest and oldest professional association dedicated to the advancement of technical communication. The Northeast Ohio chapter of STC is an award-winning chapter that knows how to have fun when we learn. So speaking of fun, today I am honored to introduce my friend Jennifer Yaros, who is the founder and Chief Creativity Officer of BrainSpark and the author of the book Conditioning Your Mind to Fuel Creativity. Someone who registered for this webinar will win a free copy of an ebook of this book. And just a side note, when you pick up this book, I think you'll feel like Jennifer is in the room talking with you. She's that great a writer. Jennifer is passionate about helping people tap into their personal creativity and using it to solve business problems. She's the creator of the BrainSpark program, a creativity and innovation product offering from Radcom, an instructional design and technical writing consulting company in Hudson, Ohio. Jennifer has been delivering training programs, creative thinking workshops, and process improvement plans for mid-size and Fortune 500 companies for over 2 decades. She's also frequently speaking at industry events across the nation. Please help me welcome Jennifer Yaros. Yay.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for taking time out of your lunch break to join us today. I'm very happy to talk to you about tapping into the creative mind and the science behind generating ideas. If time allows at the end, because we only have a half hour, we will be taking questions. So as we're moving along, I'm going to have to be moving quickly. So if you have a question, feel free to type it in the chat, and Tricia will monitor that. And at the end, we will circle back if the time allows. If we don't get to your questions, feel free to contact me. I have my website address and email address up on the screen now. I'm also on all of the typical social media. I'm active on that, so you can feel free to reach out to me through those channels. A little bit about the BrainSpark program I've created. My goal for doing that is to help organizations, leaders, and employees develop and use creative thinking. The reason you want to do that is to help come up with innovative solutions to everyday problems that businesses encounter. I do this through education and coaching and training, specifically on developing your personal creativity, improving your personal innovation competencies, and generating an innovative culture at your company. First, I would like to know a little bit about who feels like they're creative. So if you could take a moment and type into the chat either yes or no if you think you are creative. And everybody thought this was just going to be a webinar where you just sit by, right? I don't do those kind of things. I'm always big on audience participation. So I see a lot of yeses, great, a couple no's most of the time. Yes, yes, yes. Excellent. Well, that's great. Everybody feels that they're creative. Not everybody. Those that don't, my hope is that I change your mind by the end of this presentation. I would like to share this video. This is the Apple's Think Different manifesto, and I feel it perfectly describes who creative people are. So here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round pegs and square holes, the ones who see things differently. They're not fond of rules, and they have no respect for the status quo. You can praise them, disagree with them, quote them, disbelieve them, glorify them, or vilify them. About the only thing you cannot do is ignore them, because they change things. They invent, they imagine, they heal, they explore, they create, they inspire. They push the human race forward. Maybe they have to be crazy. How else can you stare at an empty canvas and see a work of art? Or sit in silence and hear a song that's never been written? Or gaze at a red planet and see a laboratory on wheels? We make tools for these kind of people. While some see them as crazy ones, we see genius. Because the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones that do. So I just think that is a beautiful statement of what creativity is and who is creative. Creative people come from any profession. In the video, you saw dancers, you saw physicists, you saw mathematicians, painters, speakers, and their creativity can take many different forms. That's a big thing to remember. The creativity can be music, physics, religion, science, dance, any of that. Often when people feel that they're not creative, or even when they do feel that they're creative, it's because they're confusing creativity with art. They see them as interchangeable, and often people feel that creativity and innovation are changeable. However, each of these have a very different definition. Creativity is a method of thinking and seeing things in a different way. Art is a product of creativity. So it's just one form that creativity may take. It is possible to be artistic without being creative, and you can be creative without being artistic. So here's an example. I enjoy crocheting, and specifically amigurumi, which is a type of crochet art form that instead of creating Afghans, I create characters and animals. Now, while these animals that I create are artistic, I do not see them as creative. However, the person that wrote the pattern that I'm following used creative thinking to figure out how to form knotted yarn into designs. So the person that wrote the pattern used creative thinking, and the product that I created following the pattern was simply artistic. Now, unlike art, you cannot have innovation without creative thinking. Innovation absolutely relies on creative thinking. Now, the difference between creativity and innovation are the results. Creativity produces ideas, and innovation produces action and values. So I'll repeat that. Creativity produces ideas, and innovation produces action and values. You need to use your creative thinking, the thinking in a different way, to generate an idea. Then you must take action with that idea and put it through the innovation process, which is development of a product or process, rolling it out, and then at the end, you must have some kind of measurable ROI. Now that ROI or value could be that it saves time, generates money, or helps the environment. Okay, so you have your idea, you have your action, and then you have your value. And so I'll put this into context with an example for you. If you make a friendship bracelet, that's artistic. There's a million patterns out there on how to do this that people can follow. I have a daughter that used to love doing this in middle school. Now, if you make a friendship bracelet in a different way, say from a new kind of glass, or you have a new type of knot that you use, that's using creative thinking. So you're figuring out a new way to make this bracelet. Now, to make this innovative, you need to figure out a way to do something to meet value and an unmet need. So if you were to take plastic bottles out of the ocean and figure out a way to make plastic beads out of it and then create a bracelet, you have an innovative product and process. So this is exactly what a company called Four Oceans did. They the owners of it, the founders, were in Indonesia, and they could not believe all of the plastic bottles that were just floating around in the harbor. And the fishermen were literally pushing their boats through an ocean of plastic bottles. When they talked to some of the locals asking why they don't clean their harbor up, they replied that they make money by bringing in fish, not by bringing in plastic bottles. So here's where the innovation comes in. These guys had the great idea, the creative idea of doing something about it and turning those plastic bottles into plastic beads, and then developing bracelets and selling it to build awareness. So your measurables, the value that is being met is environmental. So they're helping to clean up the ocean, and they're raising awareness by the pollution in the ocean. So I want to, now that we've gotten the definitions out of the way, I would like to do a quick little activity. I call this my Fonzie activity, and I'm going to share my webcam real quick to help set this up. Let's see. Is everybody able to see me okay? Somebody type yes in the chat. Yes? Okay, great. So I would like everybody to put both of your fists out in front of you, and with your left, put thumbs up, just like Fonz. And with your right, point your finger. Now switch. So you're going to have left pointer and right Fonz. Switch again and again. Don't be frustrated if you're not getting it. This does take a lot of practice. I practiced a lot, so I was able to do this in front of everybody. Okay, so that's just a quick little activity you can do to kind of get your brain working in different areas. I'm going to turn off my camera so I'm not distracted by seeing myself. The great thing with doing these types of activities is it takes you away from what you've been focusing on. And like I said, it gets the different parts of your brain working. So now we're going to get into the science of your mind and the creative brain. There are 3 cognitive networks that connect to various regions in the brain that relate to creativity in different ways. So those 3 networks are the executive attention network, the imagination network, and the salience network. The executive attention network is, think of it as the foundation of creativity. It's what your creative thinking is built on. This network helps with your laser focus. So this is what you use, what is engaged in your mind when you're studying, reading, or practicing. And then those things, the studying, reading, and practicing, give you the ability to master different things, like mastering color, mastering mathematics, music, language. And the better at these things that you are, the more able you are to create paintings and beautiful architecture and symphonies and famous speeches. So that's your foundation. You have to learn the basics before you can get to those upper levels of mastery. The next network, the imagination network, this is the part that allows your brain to try previously untried things. So with the information that the executive network provides, the imagination network pulls from it. So it's pulling from your memory. The more memories and the more things that you try means you have more information for this network to pull from. The imagination network is also involved in planning and daydreaming. So an example would be Stephen Hawking. He used his executive attention network while he was learning mathematics and physics. But when he came up with his theories about the universe, he was engaging his imagination network. Then the last network is the salience network. And this is what helps you monitor the world around you, and it helps to filter it. So you always have a lot of things going on around you. Your senses are constantly taking in information. So the clock ticking, people talking, the smell of your lunch, the light flickering, all of that is going on, but your salience network filters it so you're only aware of the things that you need. This is why if you're concentrating on something or working on a project, you may not hear somebody that calls your name. If you didn't have this network and you were constantly bombarded with all of those senses at one time, you would never be able to have a rational thought, let alone a creative one. There's a really good quote in a book called Wired to Create that talks about these three networks and the connection with creative people. It says, creative people are especially good at exercising flexibility in activating or deactivating these brain networks. In doing so, they're able to juggle seemingly contradictory modes of thought, cognitive and emotional, deliberate and spontaneous. So this is getting to the theme of the day, practice, practice, practice. The more you practice accessing these various networks and moving from the different ones, the better you are at it. An example is practicing the scales on a piano. Piano teachers will harp on people constantly, practice your scales, practice your scales. But the more you do that, the more you're engaging that executive attention network. And then try switching over to improvising. And the more you practice doing those two things, the improvising would be the engaging your imagination network, the easier it is to switch over it, and the easier it is to activate different parts of your brain. So that was the deep sciencey kind of stuff. So I hope you're all still with me. Next, we're talking about neurotransmitters, and that still sounds kind of intimidating, but I'm sure that you recognize several of these that are on the screen. A neurotransmitter are chemicals that are released by the nerve endings in the brain, and they tell it to have specific reactions. So they're like the messengers in the brain. The ones that are specific to creative thinking are serotonin, dopamine, endorphins, cortisol, and adrenaline. So type in the chat which neurotransmitters you think help with creative thinking. And you can just use the first letter since they're kind of long. We have an E, so endorphins, all of them. Okay, great. So the ones that are pro-creativity are the serotonin, dopamine, and endorphins. The serotonin is the neurotransmitter in your brain that signals calm. So this is what your brain really needs when it's generating creative ideas. It needs that calm. So the more calm you are, the more likely you are to have creative ideas. Your brain is pumping through that serotonin. This is why people tend to have really great ideas when they're meditating, because there's a lot of serotonin going on. Also, if you've ever been very angry or frustrated, have you had trouble getting words out of your mouth or making a coherent thought, and you just have to kind of stop, take that deep breath and count to 10? That's helping to calm yourself so you can get that thinking going and get the serotonin going through again. Now, the dopamine and endorphins, those are the feel-good neurotransmitters. The dopamine is associated with the pleasure sensors. So if you've ever had a really great idea and suddenly you get super excited about it, that's your brain is all of a sudden releasing the dopamine. Now the endorphins, I'm sure a lot of you have heard that the runner's high, these are the things, the endorphins are the neurotransmitters that are generated when you're exercising. And a lot of people will experience during exercise great ideas. I do that all the time when I'm running, to the point where I started carrying a recorder so I could capture some of the ideas I had. It's also, sometimes you'll hear, if you sit a lot at work, get up and walk around. If you need to take a break and because you're stuck on a problem, or do jumping jacks. That's to get the endorphins going. So it's a great way if you are having trouble solving a problem at work, get up, take a brief walk, get those endorphins moving. Now, the opposite of being calm is stress. So that's where these other two anti-creativity neurotransmitters come in. When you're stressed, you have cortisol and adrenaline being produced in your brain. These two neurotransmitters activate the fight or flight impulse, which is detrimental to creative thinking. Other things that will cause your brain to generate cortisol is depression and sadness. So often it's very difficult to have creative ideas if you're depressed or sad. There's one other inhibitor to creative thinking, but it's not a neurotransmitter, but it's definitely worth mentioning, and that is stimulants. So unfortunately, that cup of coffee you like having in the morning or sometimes in the afternoon as a pick-me-up is not conducive to creative thinking. The stimulants activate the frontal lobe, which is the part of the brain associated with deep focus. So it's best, if you want to do some creative thinking, if you need to do some creative thinking, hold off on the caffeine. And once you have that idea and you really want to focus on it and polish it, then go and get that cup of coffee. So that's how you can use the stimulants to your advantage. Now, another quick little thing to engage different parts of your brain. I would like everybody to take a moment and try to write your name with your non-dominant hand. And here's my attempt, which I think it's actually pretty good. I think it is more legible than my regular signature with my right hand. Give everybody a moment to do that. Okay, now that you've written your name with your non-dominant hand, the next challenge is to write your name backwards with your non-dominant hand. So mirror writing. And this is how my name looks. The reason I had you do these two activities is because, again, it's activating different parts of your brain. And you can see that even my mirror written name, it's not too bad. It's pretty legible, but I have also been practicing it. So again, practice, practice, practice. The famous inventor and painter, you may have heard of him, Leonardo da Vinci, he practiced mirror writing. A lot of his journals and notes are done in mirror writing. Some people attribute this saying he was trying to write his notes in code so nobody could read them, but mirror writing really isn't that difficult to decipher. So the other house of thought is that he did his notes in mirror writing because it helped him look at things differently and it helped to unleash his creative thinking. The download, and Tricia, if you wouldn't mind, if you have that, if you could provide the link again for the downloads. If you haven't had a chance to download everything, I provided not only the slides for this presentation, but I also provided a link for a quiz. It's a right brain, left brain, to figure out what you're more dominant. This has nothing to do with what hand you write with. It's more of what brain you engage mostly when you are thinking. So the right brain, left brain, I'm sure a lot of people have heard it. So type in the chat box, which side is the analytical side? Left, left, right, left, left. Okay, great. So it is the left side of the brain. The left side is associated with logic, order, and being more analytical. So the right hemisphere is associated more with creative thinking and free-form thinking. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't engage either side of your brain when you're thinking analytically, because there are connectors to both, but the left side is engaged more with your analytical thinking and the right more with your creative thinking. So this is where that quiz helps to see if you're more of an analytical thinker or a creative thinker. Now, the sweet spot is when you use both sides relatively evenly. And again, you can do this with practice, by practicing different forms of thinking. If you need to improve your left side, try doing math problems. If you need to try to improve your right side, try doing some outside of the box thinking and brainstorming type of lessons. The other thing that's important to know about the left-right hemispheres of the brain is when you are doing idea generation. So the left side of your brain is the side that is responsible for your instant answers, things that you know right off of the tip of your tongue. So if somebody asks you a question, the left side is the one that says, ooh, I know what the answer is to that. And it starts giving all of these answers. And it's very loud. So I like to say that it's a loudmouth. It's that person in the room that you always hear and you can't hear anybody else over what this person is saying. And the only way somebody's going to get in anything edgewise is when that person finally shuts up. So that's the left side. Now, after the left side has finished spouting out all of this information, then the right side can come in. And the whole time, though, it's been waiting for its turn. It's been making these unusual connections. It's been pulling from your past and your previous experience and saying, how might this connect to that question? So that's where those moments of inspiration come from. It's when you finally stepped back, your left brain has finished all of its answers, you've relaxed a little bit, and your right brain is like, hey, have you thought of this? And that's another reason why often people will have that moment of inspiration right when they lay down and go to sleep, or when you're completely removed from a situation. Have you ever gotten home and been like, oh, I should have brought this up in the meeting? It's because your right brain was working on those things. In the slide notes, I did provide a couple of brain teasers. These are another great way to get different parts of your brain activated at one time and getting the right side, left side working together. I have the very last slide has the answers. So if you want to try solving these without knowing the answers, don't look at the last slide. And then on the right side, those 9 dots, some of you may have heard of this puzzle. The goal is to try to connect all of the dots using only 4 lines, but the kicker is you cannot lift up your pencil or retrace over a line. And again, I have the answer to that at the last page. If you are interested in more activities, I do have my book, Conditioning Your Mind to Fuel Creativity, is now available on Amazon. I have a ton of activities in there for different ways you can work on developing and improving your creative thinking. And we are at 12:30, so sorry we didn't get to any questions, but again, you can reach me at my website or on my email address, or again on any of the social medias to ask any questions.
Jennifer, this is Trish. I want to thank you for the great information. I learned a lot. There was a lot of technical information in there that I had no idea about, and I appreciate all the great information. I do encourage everyone to contact Jennifer with questions, comments. Go grab the book. It's a fascinating read. And I want to congratulate our winner of our random drawing, Nancy Carteret. Yay, Nancy.
Yay, congratulations.
We have your contact information from your Eventbrite registration, and we'll contact you about how to get your free book. And Jennifer, if there's any closing comments that you want to say?
I would just like to encourage everybody to try some creative thinking and get up there, move around, get those endorphins and dopamine moving. And yeah, again, reach out to me if you have any questions.